Hi everybody and welcome to part 2 of our series of Learn from Morphy. This time we're going to have a look at a game between two very strong players of the era of the early 1900s, Richard Reti and Saively Tartakower. Richard Reti you might know of, he's written obviously the Reti opening is named after him, but also a number of very famous books, Masters of the Chessboard in particular, and Modern Ideas in Chess are some of his famous works that he's written. And this is a game that he played in 1910, as I said, against Saively Tartakower. And the importance of this game is going to come back to the conclusion of the Paul Morphy game that we had looked at in part 1 of our series. This is the final position that we are going to focus on, and in particular, notice the position of the bishop on g5, the rook on d8, and the black king on e8 that is checkmated. We'll come back to look at this position and see the similarities between it and the position that we'll get to in the Reti versus Tartakower game that we're about to have a look at. So without further ado, let's get into the game, Richard Reti versus Saively Tartakower from 1910. This game started out as a Caro-Kann defense, and as is pretty standard here, knight c3 to protect the pawn on e4. Black trades on e4, and this is all very standard. However, here, Saively Tartakower plays the move knight f6. Has the same idea as modern play against the Caro-Kann. These days, bishop f5 is the preferred main line, but again, the idea of challenging the initial setup of the pawn and knight in the center for white. So knight f6 does that same idea. Black's not particularly worried about the knights being exchanged and allowing double pawns because both of those bishops after e takes f6 will have a clear path. So after the knight takes and e takes, both bishops have clear paths into the game, and black isn't really hindered in any sense apart from having that double pawn, which is only a very minor deficiency in a position. So returning to the main line, obviously the options here for white with the knight being attacked are obviously we trade off that knight, which is something we just talked about. We don't really want to do that. To move it to a safe square, for example, g3, g5, or back to c3, or to protect the knight and try and maintain it, maintain some better central control. And that's what white does in this position. However, the move that Reti chooses is a little bit unusual in that he plays queen d3. Normally, the general rule is don't bring your queen out early. Rather, bring out your knights and bishops, minor pieces first, then bring your queen out later. But the queen serves a useful purpose, and in particular, if you consider alternative ways of protecting the knight, there are drawbacks. If you play, for example, bishop d3, that leaves the pawn on d4 unprotected. Black can safely play queen takes d4 because a tactic that's often found in these positions with the d pawn unprotected is bishop b5 check. However, with the pawn on c6, there's no check, so no discovered attack. So bishop d3 is just not possible. Another option might be to play f3. Again, it does protect the knight in the center, but again has the drawback of taking away f3, which is the ideal square for the knight on g1 to develop to. Again, other alternatives with the queen have similar drawbacks. Queen f3 blocks the best square for the knight. Queen e2 blocks the development of the bishop on f1. So when you're taking the alternatives, that really makes the move that Reti chose, queen d3, the logical alternative. Here Tartakower plays an interesting move, which at first sight looks like a blunder. However, when we think about it a little bit further, there is a logic to it. However, as we'll see, there are indeed further problems down the track. Tartakower plays the move e5. First sight looks like an unprotected pawn. However, he does have a plan to get back his lost material. One advantage that it does have, again, by both moving the d and the e pawns forward 2 squares, means that both the f8 and c8 bishop aren't impeded by any pawns, which is often a problem black suffers in some of these openings. Not so much the Carrier Khan, but some related systems like the French, where you have a pawn on e6, the bishop on c8 is often blocked in. One of the ideas of playing c6 rather than e6 is to prevent that bishop on c8 from being blocked in. Now you've challenged the centre with a pawn, and again, not blocking in either bishop, so both bishops have clear paths to develop. However, in doing so, by pushing a pawn, it's another move where you're not developing your major pieces, which is, as we'll see, a bit of a drawback in this game. Reti decides to capture the pawn, and the follow-up to regain material is queen a5 check, obviously forking both the king and the unprotected pawn on e5. So obviously there's another number of options for Reti to get out of the check. He plays the most sensible, although it does look like at first sight there are some drawbacks to it. Bishop d2. Tartakower plays the logical follow-up, queen takes e5, and now it appears that Reti has some serious problems with the knight on e4. Not only is there a pin on the e-file, but we also have the knight on f6 already attacking that pin knight on e4. So we have not only the knight being pinned, it's also attacked by another piece. We've got two attackers. We only have the one defender at present in the queen on d3. And there is really only one other way to protect the pawn, and that is to move the pawn up to f3. Again, the drawback with taking away the best square for the knight on g1, but also the fact that black can just simply build up more pieces. They can play a developing move like bishop f5 and try and win some material that way, having an extra attacker for the white defenders. However, this is where Reti plays a very sneaky defense to get out of all this. And this is where this game ties into the previous game that we looked at with Paul Morphy. Reti decides to castle queenside, apparently blundering the knight on e4. However, he does have some rather sneaky tactics in mind. In this case, if the queen takes the knight, the refutation is hopefully reasonably obvious. The fact that black has their king and queen on the e-file means that it's white that's going to do the pin, and black's going to be the one who's going to be losing their queen, thanks to that pin on the e-file. Of course, Tartakower being, again, one of the strongest players of the time, he avoided this continuation. However, there does seem to be another perfectly reasonable knight takes e4 response. And this is where we see the tie-in with the Morphy game. Thematically, we have a king on e8. We have a bishop that can go to g5. We have a rook and, in fact, a queen as well that can go to d8. So we have all the parts that, in some way, mirror the Paul Morphy game that we had looked at previously. If we go to that now, and that final position with the bishop on g5, the rook on d8, the king on e8. Obviously, you can see in this position there's quite a few differences, but the essential elements of the position remain the same. The trick here is to find the right move order to make that pattern come about. And this is where Reti played the rather brilliant queen d8. Again, another queen sacrifice, similar to what we saw in the Morphy game. The queen sacrifice setting up the final checkmating idea. Obviously, there's no way for black to get out of the check apart from capturing the queen with the king. And now bishop g5, importantly, being a double check, so check from both the rook and the bishop, means that the only way for black to get out of check is to move the king to a safe square. Here we have a repetition of the Morphy idea if king e8, rook d8 checkmate, and again that pattern with the king on e8 being checkmated by the rook on d8 and the bishop on g5. However, in this game, we do have a slight variation, and this is something that you'll see in all these games that you look at over this series. Very similar patterns, but all with slight differences and variations as we go through. In this case, the king can go to c7. However, again, variation on theme. This time, checkmating move, bishop going to d8 rather than rook d8. So a nice short game, but again, that mating position and the themes that were brought up, queen sacrifice, you again had that discovered attack, double attack, all the pins that were involved as well for both sides, even in such a short game, but all came together in that conclusion with a rather nice finish by Richard Reti to take out the victory. So hopefully you learned something from that game. Again, if you like the video, share, thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, all that sort of thing, and hopefully see you again soon for another video.